All right, good morning, everyone. Sorry we're getting started 3 minutes late here, but it's just so good to see so many friends. Start of a new year. So, anyways, um, good morning and welcome to the Vancouver City Council meeting of Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. Now, this council meeting is being convened in person and by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw, City of Vancouver Electronic Meetings. As such, council members and the public may participate in person or by electronic means. Do we have anyone online today? No? Okay. Uh, Okay. Video council members speaking, presentations, and vote results will be projected on the live stream when available. In case of an emergency where we need to evacuate the building, I'd like to direct your attention to the exits. Just go through the glass doors and hang a left at the pillar and walk down the stairs. And if for whatever reason the glass doors or any of the exits back there are obstructed, we do have 4 exits on the side here. If that's the case, we'll give you further instruction. And if you require any accessibility assistance, please remain at your location and wait for one of our amazing security team members to guide you to a safe location. I'd also like to highlight the fact that there's the defibrillator located at the end of the hallway. So if you're like me and you had a really crazy Christmaka, let me tell you, it might come in handy. We never know. I would like to acknowledge that we are holding today's council meeting on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and I do want to thank them for their generosity and their hospitality and the love and care they show this land that we get to live, work, and play on. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to unlearn what we've learned in the past and learn the true history as to what's happened on these lands. And we do that, we're going to build an incredibly bright future for all of us, full of love and prosperity, going out way beyond 7 generations. I also want to highlight our team members at the City of Vancouver. Now, we've had the benefit of working side by side with them for about 2 years, and some of the council members, 6 years now. And I can tell you, our people are absolutely amazing. They choose to work at the City of Vancouver. They don't have to. They choose to, and they do it with passion and love. And they're incredible. And I think we're incredibly fortunate to have such a dedicated team of individuals that choose to be here every single day. So thank you very much, wherever you are at the City of Vancouver. So with that, can we please get a roll call?
Mayor Sim in the chair, Councillor Kirby-Young, Councillor Dominato, Councillor Bly, Councillor Fry, Councillor Montague,
Present.
Councillor Klassen, Councillor Meisner, and Councillor Joe.
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you very much. Now, the first order of business today is we actually have a proclamation, and it's on International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Now, today we solemnly gather to honor a day of profound historical significance, which, like I mentioned, is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Now, this January the 27th marks the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp on January the 17th, 1945, a day designated by the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 60-7 on the 1st of November 2005. And as a personal story, my family and I, we had, I don't even know how to choose the word here, but we've been to Auschwitz. And I think if anyone gets the opportunity, and if you have the means, make the opportunity to go visit Auschwitz. I know we live in a time now where history is getting erased, it's getting rewritten on multiple forms, and I think the best thing to do is to educate yourself firsthand and actually see for yourself what's happened or what did happen during the Second World War, and it'll hit you to your core, and it will also hopefully give people a better understanding as to how terrible things were and how we have to, as a society, not forget what happened, because if we do, we're bound to repeat history again and again and again. Now, as we reflect on this dark chapter in history, Vancouver joins the Jewish community, Canadians from all walks of life, and the global community in standing against anti-Semitism, racism, hate, and genocide. Today, we honor the memory of those lost in the Holocaust and the resilience of the survivors. In partnership with Vancouver's Jewish community, we commit to preserving these stories, educating future generations, and advocating for a world free of hatred and intolerance. We're deeply grateful for the contributions of the Jewish community and for the dedication of our team members to upholding human rights. Now, I do want to invite my fellow team members on council to join me in reading the proclamation and proclaiming January the 27th, 2025 as International Holocaust Remembrance Day in Vancouver. We're a little rusty. It's a new year, so why don't I do this? Why don't I just hand it off? There's about 6 sections here, so.
International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Whereas this year on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau.
And whereas January 27th is designated by the United Nations General Assembly as International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
And whereas since 2005, the UN and its member states have held commemoration ceremonies to mark the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau and to honor the victims and the survivors of the Holocaust.
And whereas the purpose of International Holocaust Remembrance Day is to serve as a date of the official commemoration of the victims of the Nazi regime and to promote Holocaust education throughout the world.
And whereas we join with the Vancouver Holocaust Education Center and our Jewish community on an annual day to commemorate and honor the International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Now, therefore, I, Ken Sim, the Mayor of the City of Vancouver, on behalf of all of my teammates on City Council, all the elected officials, and everyone who chooses to work throughout the City of Vancouver, do hereby proclaim January the 27th, 2025 as International Holocaust Remembrance Day in the City of Vancouver. It was correctly. Now, if we can please welcome survivor Mariette Dudok, educator and Order of Canada recipient, to say a few words on behalf of the Jewish community, and then she'll be followed by our friend Nico Slobinski, the Vice President of CJA Pacific Region.
Thank you. Oops, maybe I'll just hold it. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Sim. Thank you very much for your introduction. I'm pleased to speak here as a child survivor. I was born in Brussels, Belgium in 1935. I came to Canada in 1947 as one of the war child orphans. I have dedicated my life to Holocaust education and community leadership. I'm a co-founder of the Vancouver Holocaust Educational Center. Through my work as outreach speaker and author of my memoir, A Childhood Unspoken, I have shared my experiences of the Holocaust with thousands of students and public audiences, both locally in BC, across Canada, and around the world. I've come out of silence and hiding to educate against anti-Semitism, racism, and hate of all kinds. On January 27, we marked the 80th anniversary year since the liberation of Auschwitz and Birkenau concentration camp. It is a day where we as Canadian and the international community reflects on the dangers of anti-Semitism left unchecked, and the role that each and every one of us can play in being vigilant against this hate and Holocaust denial, distortion, which has risen in recent years, and shockingly at a level we have not seen since 1939. Within our Vancouver community alongside me, there are Holocaust survivors who are dedicated to educating young people and the general public through sharing their first-hand experiences. Collectively, we honor those who survived and more those who did not. International Holocaust Remembrance Day is dedicated to promoting Holocaust education, which is the heart of the mission of the Vancouver Holocaust Education Center. The mission is more urgent than ever, or as globally and in our own backyard in British Columbia, we are encountering an increasing and troubling tide of anti-Semitism, a horrific rise in anti-Semitic hateful acts, bluntly, hatred to the Jewish people, and the rampant spreading of Holocaust denial and distortion. The latter include action or statements that seek to minimize and misrepresent or excuse the Holocaust or instance of anti-Semitism. I want to thank this council for adopting the IHRA definition against anti-Semitism almost 2 years ago when I last spoke in Chamber. We must resolve to challenge hate, anti-Semitism, and distortion of the Holocaust whenever and wherever it appears. We must remember to always safeguard the future. I will keep on speaking and educating and urge you to proudly join me to voice and action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariette. Your words resonate with me. The work that you do with the survivors and through the Vancouver Holocaust Education Center. I want to thank the City of Vancouver, this mayor and council, for the support you extend for this important commemoration every year. I also want to highlight the work that Councillor Kirbyang did to make sure that this important day was added to the calendar of commemorations of the City of Vancouver a few years ago. International Holocaust Remembrance Day gives us the opportunity to honor the memory of the victims, stand with the survivors, and reflect on the devastating impacts that modern-day anti-Semitism have in society today. We heard Mariette just now about those impacts. We must stand together against any attempts to erase or distort the historical record of the Holocaust, including those who draw comparisons to the murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others to modern-day events. Actions like those not only endanger us all, but perpetuate anti-Semitism. Education and the enforcement of laws are the best tools we have to combat anti-Semitism and discrimination in society. We will always remember. We will never forget. I am comforted that we are standing here today together as we remember. The most important thing we can ask ourselves today, here and now, is what we can do, each of us can do, to combat anti-Semitism and discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, well, I'm going to keep going here. Do we have quorum? 1, 2. We do not have quorum. 3, 4. We need 2 more counselors in here. All right. So we're going to get started again, everyone. So the plan for the day, any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website. The link to that form will be posted on X at Van City Clerk. I also want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. I do remind council that when addressing speakers and the city's team members, we're going to avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. Now, today we have 3 administrative items: in-camera motion, adoption of minutes, and matters adopted on consent. We have 1 presentation, 2 communications, 4 reports, and 9 referral reports. Noting referral report 5 was withdrawn at the request of our team members. 11 bylaws, a notice of council member motions, new business, and inquiries and other matters. So the plan for today, we will break at noon for lunch, followed by the in-camera meeting, return at 3 p.m. to continue to deal with the remainder of the agenda, adjourn or recess by 5 p.m. as we have a public hearing at 6 p.m. If we do recess, the reconvene date is Thursday, January the 23rd, 2025 at 3 p.m. In camera, council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would someone like to move a motion to go in camera this week? Thank Councillor Bly, seconded by Councillor Klassen. Thank you very much. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 1 are from the Mayor's Budget Task Force Implementation Oversight Committee on October the 15th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Meisner, seconded by Councillor Dominato. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 2 are from the Nomination Subcommittee on November the 5th, 2024, sorry, November 15th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great, thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Meisner. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 3 are from the Auditor General Committee on December the 5th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Someone like to move? Councillor Klassen, thank you. Councillor Bly, seconded. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Carries unanimously. Minutes 4 are from the council meeting on December the 10th, 2024. Are there any corrections? Would someone like to move? Councillor Joe, thank you. Seconded Councillor Montague. Thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 5 are from the public hearing on December the 10th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great, would someone like to move? Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor, I think, Joe, you put up your hand? Perfect, thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 6 are from the council meeting following the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting on December the 11th and 12th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, so Councillor Klassen, you moved. Seconded by Councillor Montague. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 6 are from the special council considering whether to order the demolition of a building meeting on December the 18th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? We have Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Meisner. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Give me one. Okay, so council will now consider matters adopted on consent. We have communications 1 and 2, reports 1 through 3, and referral reports 1 through 4 and 6 through 10 on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Referral report number 5 was withdrawn at the request of our team members, and we will hold report number 4 to hear from speakers. Council may adopt the recommendations for communications 1 and 2, reports 1 through 3, and referral Referral reports 1 through 4 and 6 through 10 on consent. Now, before we consider the consent agenda, if anyone believes that they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to declare it. Does anyone wish to disclose a conflict? And I'm assuming the people in queue are going to be holding reports. So can I just see a hand? If anyone thinks they have a conflict, can you please put up your hand? Great. So now, does any member wish to hold any of the items for debate or questions to team members? And I do see that we have a queue here. So, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to hold report 1, local government by-election, and report 3, federal funding for the Canby Street Bridge seismic upgrade project, please.
Okay. One sec. Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to hold referral report 10 for 45454575 West 10th Avenue for procedural questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else in the queue, let me just make sure I got this right here. Okay. And clerk, please correct me if I'm wrong here. I've done the mental math. It looks like we have communications 1 and 2 and report number 2 and referral reports 1 through 9 for the consent agenda. Except for 5, which is, except 5, which was withdrawn. Okay, would someone like to move adoption? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bly, seconded by Councillor Klassen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. So the following have been approved on consent. Communication number 1, resignations, members of council, and communication number 2, change to council meeting schedule. We have report number 2, Auditor General Auditor General Committee recommendations transmittal report. And then we have referral report number 1, CD-1 rezoning 2535 Carolina Street and 557 to 569 East 10th Avenue. Referral report number 2, miscellaneous amendments, zoning and development bylaw and various other bylaws and land use documents. Referral report number 3, CD-1 rezoning 210 through 220 West 6th Avenue and 2224 Alberta Street. Referral report number 4, CD-1 rezoning 4-36 West 3rd Avenue and 5 West 4th Avenue. Referral report number 6, rezoning 767 through 791 West 28th Avenue. Referral report number 7, rezoning 8366 through 8380 Beatrice Street. Referral report number 8, CD-1 rezoning 43 through 95 East 3rd Avenue. And referral report number 9, CD-1 rezoning 1171 West 12th Avenue. So presentations, we have one presentation today, which is the 2025 assessment role presented by the BC Assessment Authority. And we do have Michael Law, Deputy Assessor, and Jason Singbeal, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Senior Appraiser, both from BC Assessment, here to present.
Just want to introduce a little bit. It has been over 2 decades of custom, a long-standing custom, that City Council invite BC Assessment to come to council to explain and any kind of like interesting trends within the assessment world. After the presentation, Michael Law and the team will be here to answer any questions that you have relating to assessment. However, if council have any questions relating to property tax policy, we also have city staff here to answer as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, hello everyone. Thank you again for the invitation to present the 2025 assessment role to council. Again, my name is Michael Law, Deputy Assessor. With me is Jason Singbeil, Senior Appraiser, and in attendance as well is Edward Chum, Director of Industrial, Commercial, and Investment in the Lower Mainland. So for today's overview, we'll be covering a little bit about BC Assessment, how we value and classify properties, our assessment cycle and key dates, the relationship between assessments and taxes, again, the 2025 assessment role overview, the appeal process, and then a little bit more information about BC Assessment and how members can find that, and then questions at the end. So I will pass along right now to Jason.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jason Singbeil. I'm a Senior Appraiser with BC Assessment. Before we get into the overview of the 2025 role, I just thought I'd give a little bit of a process and history of how we get to that point. So our history begins in the early 1970s. Well in excess of 140 different jurisdictions were trying to put together assessments, tax amounts, to come up with property tax numbers to fuel and support communities. This raised large concerns about fairness in terms of how assessed values were determined. And in the late 70s, the BC government put together a bipartisan committee to look at assessments and taxes in the province. That bipartisan committee determined that the best course of action was for one organization to do assessments for the entire province. The Assessment Act was written, and BC Assessment came into existence and was established in 1974, producing the first provincial-wide assessment that year. Our enduring purpose is pretty simple: support communities through independent excellence in property assessment, guided by 4 key values. We are here for each other. This includes our relationship with stakeholders, including the municipalities. We own our experience. We are one team, and we are dedicated learners. The end product is the assessment role, which we'll go into a little bit more detail as an overview shortly. In 2025, that represents over 2.2 million properties in the province, with a total value in excess of $2.82 trillion. Along with value, the assessment role also identifies ownership, classification, and exemptions if they exist on each property. How we value different properties. One of the key changes when BC Assessment came in was establishing actual market value. The Assessment Act, as we'll get into a little bit more with some of the key dates, establishes that we look at market value each year as of July 1st, with a physical condition and use as of October 31st. Key factors that affect market value are kind of those main sort of ones you hear when people talk about real estate. Location, land use controls, what sort of things can you do on a property? How big is it? What's the topography? Building characteristics, how old's the building? What's the quality? What's the size? And if it's an income-producing property, what rents can be achieved? What risk factors potentially are impacting the capitalization rate to determine value? Fundamental in determining market value is the principle of highest and best use, which is an appraisal term. Fundamentally, it's if you have a vacant piece of land, you have to consider what you can do with it, what's physically capable and possible given the size, topography, services available, what's legally permissible given zoning and land controls, what's financially feasible. You may have several options. How much money is left as a profit at the end with each of those options? And finally, what's maximally productive? What, is the most productive property decision based on the other three criteria? Municipalities play a key role in some of these highest and best use decisions, most notably looking at land use controls. So typically, we might expect to see a new official community plan or neighborhood plan come to existence. That may require rezoning. Once that's in place, we would expect to see, especially if it's higher density, considerably higher density, new development start within that location based on that higher use. We typically see market demand. If there are towers in place, you might start to see smaller buildings that don't achieve that density going onto the market. From that, we determine what the market value is, and that goes on the assessment based on the values of July 1st each year. Along with value, another important portion of the assessment role is the classification of properties. This is particularly important when we look at having a variable tax system where different tax rates can be applied to different classifications. In Vancouver, there's 9 in total. There's 2 that are particularly important in Vancouver, Class 1 residential and Class 6 business and other. That comprises about 95% of all properties in the city of Vancouver. Our assessment cycle is pretty much determined in many ways by the Assessment Act and the key dates that are in place. So right now we're clearly in the inquiry period, which runs basically from January 1st to 31st. And it's really property owners' first opportunity to audit our assessments and look and see if there are things that they feel are errors or things that have changed from when we set the role, and an opportunity to contact our appraisers and determine how the market value is determined. From there, they can request that their assessments are reviewed by the first level assessment, which is a property assessment review panel. That deadline is January 31st each year. As we move into February through March is the hearing process for phase 1, level 1 of hearings. That culminates with the revised role being produced at the end of March. As we move through spring and summer, the focus changes to assessment quality, looking at what we can do to improve the quality of the role that goes out to our stakeholders. Also involves getting permits from municipalities, demolitions, new construction, and inspecting those. As we get into the fall, we get fully into role production for the next year. Obviously, July 1st being the market date, we're keenly looking at sales around that date. They are reviewed, and often, with most, our appraisers are calling the participants to find out what was involved in that sale. Through October, December, again, because the physical condition date is October 31st, generally you'll find our appraisers in the field inspecting new construction, inspecting demos to make sure that we have accurate information on the role. Culminates with a role being produced in December. Relationship between taxing and assessment. Assessed value, which goes out in the roll in January, times the property tax rate, which is determined by the municipalities, equals the property tax payable. Our role is really fairness to ensure that equal taxpayers are assessed at a similar value. Impact on the change of assessment value versus taxes. This is something our appraisers hear often, especially in a fast-moving market. My assessment's gone up 30%. I can't afford to have my property taxes go up 30%. Or vice versa. Hey, my property tax or my assessment went down 30%. I'm going to see a big decrease in my property taxes this year. All things being equal, what's important to consider is actually the percentage change of your property compared to the average within your municipality and property class. So if all properties went down on average in the city of Vancouver, 20% for residential, and you went down 20%, typically your taxes, again, all things being equal to the year previous, would not change. With that, I will turn things back over to Mike to give an overview.
Thank you, Jason. All right, so the 2025 assessment role overview. Before we get into the city of Vancouver, I have a quick slide on the provincial total. So this is the total role value for the province of British Columbia. There was a 1.5% increase over the previous year to 2.83 trillion. The total non-market change, which is essentially new construction, decreased by 3.5% to 38.28 billion. And the total Class 1, so that is all residential property in the province of British Columbia, is at 88.5% of the total roll value, which is $2.2 trillion. For 2025, as Jason already mentioned, there were over 2.2 million fully or properties assessed by BC Assessment, which is an increase of 1% over the previous year. For the City of Vancouver, the total roll value for 2025 very slightly decreased by 0.09% from the 2024 roll to $526.6 billion. Total non-market change, again, which is new construction, did increase by 43.3% to $6.29 billion. And Class 1, so total residential property increased by 0.53% for a total of $386.9 billion. For the 2025 assessment roll, there were 222,000 properties or FIOs that were assessed for the City of Vancouver, which is an increase of 0.7% over the previous year. So this next slide shows the total value for Vancouver from 2020 to 2025. As you'll see, there were years of increase from 2020 to 2023, and then from 2023 to 2024, a slight increase, and then relatively no change from 2024 to 2025. This slide shows the distribution of the roll value by property class. As Jason mentioned, there are 9 property classes that we assess, with the biggest or largest percentage being Class 1 residential in the City of Vancouver at 3.9% of the total roll value. This chart actually divides into subgroups, the residential, into 3 parts. So residential single-family homes, which also includes duplexes at 41.6%, residential strata, so apartments, townhouses, at 22.4%, and then residential other at 9.9%, so that's like multifamily buildings. So again, together they make up the largest percentage of property class in Vancouver, followed by Class 6, which is business and other, at 20.6% of the total roll value. This slide shows the difference between the total roll value versus the taxable roll value. So essentially what the difference is the taxable roll value is the total roll value minus exemptions or exempt properties equals the taxable roll value. Examples of exempt properties are property, for example, like schools, churches, hospitals, properties owned by government, and of course, City of Vancouver. The 2025 completed roll, so divided 3 largest categories and subcategories. So residential single-family home, the majority of properties moved between -5% to +5% over the previous year. Residential strata properties typically move from -10 to +5%. And then the commercial, industrial, and other typically move between -15 and +15. Breaking down a little bit further, this is the chart for residential single-family homes and duplexes. Breaking it down further, so 85% of all properties within this category moved between -5 and +5%. The next one shows strata residential. So approximately 90% of all properties in this category moved about -7.5 to +5%. The majority of the properties, just over 50%, moved from -5 to -1%, which is the largest bar in the middle there. And then finally, the distribution for non-residential. About 75% of all properties within these categories, or the remainder, moved from approximately -15 to +15%. All right, so this slide shows the difference. So again, market change is basically new construction. So it's change within the assessment roll that can be attributed to, for example, new construction that wasn't on the roll previously. So this chart, the top chart, shows the difference between non-market change and then the change due to market movements. So typically what the market shows movement in terms of sales. Kind of those together equals the total change. So as we'll see at the bottom for total classes, total non-market change was by contributes 1.35% to the total change, with the market decreasing at minus 1.44%, which you'll see the negative 0.09% total change for the assessment roll. Below that, we have the top 5 neighborhoods in terms of non-market change, so new construction for all classes, with the top neighborhood being Oak Ridge, followed by the West End, Cambie, Marine Drive, and Point Grey. To the right, the top 5 neighborhoods in terms of market movement for all property classes: Renfrew Heights, Dunbar, Shaughnessy, South Granville, and Arbutus. All right, I'm going to call Jason back up to quickly go over the appeal process and roll stability.
Thank you, Michael. So preparing assessment roll is one thing, but ensuring that it's stable is another thing, and that's particularly important to everyone here. Know that when we give an assessment roll, that number stays pretty tight. But it's also important for citizens to be able to review and feel comfortable, and in order to do that, there is a well-defined appeal process, so property owners can ensure that they believe that market value has been set and that they're equitable with owners and similar property types. So as I mentioned earlier, January 1st to 31st is our inquiry period. It really is a first audit for property owners to get in contact with BC Assessment in order to view the information that's gone on the assessment roll and to ask questions of how value is determined. If through that process they feel that they want a third party to review the assessed value, that takes place through March and February, with the deadline to appeal to the first level of, which is part of the Property Assessment Review Panel, on January 31st, and that is a deadline. Hearings take place starting February 2nd, running through and up to March 15th. If owners believe that through that process that they still believe the assessed value is incorrect, they have an opportunity to go to a second level of appeal, another independent party. The deadline to appeal to that party is April 30th. In addition to this formal process, BC Assessment has a no surprise policy as well. So in the fall, when we're in the process of preparing the assessment roll, we do meet with key stakeholders, property owners, to review what's likely to go on the assessed value. We also send out early notification letters to ensure that homeowners who are going to see exemption changes, classification changes, or dramatic value changes compared to the average have early notification of that taking place. All that goes to ensure a high acceptance level of the roll. BC Assessment's goal is 98%, and while this slide looks fairly dramatic, it is a fairly tight range. For the last 5 years, typical range has been between 98.19 and 98.5% acceptance, meaning for 2024, only 1.5% of property owners in Vancouver appealed their assessments. A little bit more detail on the appeal statistics. Again, 2019 through to 2024, and again, we won't have the 2025 numbers for the first level a couple more weeks, but they've declined over that process from a high of 4,922 appeals to par in 2019, down to 3,296 in 2024. Again, I mentioned about 0.5% of homeowners or property owners appeal. Of those, about 20% go on to the second level, which is about 0.2% of all properties appeal to the Property Assessment Appeal Board. We've also seen a dramatic decrease in that. You can also see the shift in the difference between residential appeals and non-residential appeals. For example, in 2024, we had 71 residential appeals to PAB, 563 non-residential appeals. From a stability perspective, the 2024 completed roll was just over $528 billion. The revised roll was just under $527 billion for a change of 0.24%. I'll turn back over to Mike to finish off with some of the communication tools that we're using.
Thank you, Jason. So as I mentioned before, we do have more information if anyone is curious about their property assessment notice, how we assess values. We like to point everyone to our website, so bcassessment.ca, where we have our very popular tool where you can insert an address and find the assessment value for this year. There's also links to an interactive property trends map, which I'll go over further. There's information on how to appeal your property if you disagree with the value, and more outstanding issues, including, and this was added for this year due to the postal strike, the ability to download your assessment notice. Names are omitted from that, but otherwise you are able to download your assessment notice. All right, as I noted earlier, we do also offer a interactive property trends map. So you're able to go to any municipality and search the trends for that municipality. In some jurisdictions as well, you can go to a neighborhood level, such as Vancouver. We all have a YouTube channel that's linked to our website for residents and owners to look at, again, videos on how we assess properties, the 2025 assessed value, how that affects property taxes, and the relationship, as Jason mentioned previously, and a variety of different topics for people if they're interested in learning more. Before the questions, I would actually like to take this time to really acknowledge the collaboration between BC Assessment and city staff, the City of Vancouver. Really, city staff have supported BC Assessment in being able to produce a stable and fair and equitable assessment. And it really is that partnership, that strong partnership that allows us to be able to produce a stability for the City of Vancouver. So I really want to take this time to thank all the city staff that work with us and that have provided support to us in the past and going forward. So with that, that brings the end to the presentation and questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And we do have questions. So just a reminder, council members, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of our team members, or BC Assessment as well, sorry, and external presenters, which I just mentioned. Councillor Fry, you are up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Excuse me. Thanks so much for the presentation. Always enjoy this one from you guys and appreciate it. Jumping right over to slide number 10 and how land use affects market value. And there's a line there about market demand for new towers high, smaller buildings often sell quickly for houses based on the redevelopment potential, not their current use. So reflecting on that and the introduction of some pretty significant kind of land use changes with the Broadway plan and with the elimination of certain view cones. Do you have any kind of like forecasting as far as what that might mean for land valuations and assessments?
Unfortunately, it's really difficult to forecast that. For example, this past year, 2025 assessment rule, there were introductions, of course, the Broadway plan and other provincials that allowed for different uses, say on that single family home that you spoke about. It really depends on how the market perceives it. This past year, there was actually a little change in a lot of areas where the additional use was implemented. Market didn't quite acknowledge or see the value in that yet. So to say the forecast, it really at this point is hard to say what the future looks like. Historically, that has been the case where there has been value added to a property when there's additional use. This past year, we've actually seen where that hasn't typically been the case, or properties that were able to develop further, those values actually have come down. So
on the balance, then, is what drives the assessment more? Is it our policies or is it the market?
Well, I would say that the market reacts to policies. So it's a combination. So the municipality will set a policy, but the market does have to respond to that. And if there is a market for, vast development, which we did see a couple of years ago, then the market would show that through sales. So all assessed values, or the very vast majority of our assessed value, is based on market value, which is based on sales. So when we see those sales, we reflect those in our values, and the sales reflect the policies that are put in place and the appetite for that policy at the time.
Okay, so that's helpful. So there is a little bit of a lag from we implement policy, the market catches up, and then that influences the assessment.
Yes.
That's helpful. Curious too, I mean, and I'm assuming you guys have taken a role in this, and Grace has done some amazing work on this. Our pilot development potential relief program. I had to look it up because I can never remember the acronym. Yeah. I mean, this has been as long as I've been on council, and you guys have been coming to. We've been talking about split assessments and the need for carving out that kind of distinction to support independent business. Do you have an assessment of this program, and do you see it as an opportunity to kind of maybe even, because it is a 5-year limited program, is there any kind of appetite with BC Assessment to have explored this kind of thing on a assessment level rather than on a local government level?
So again, our role within this is actually a support nature by providing information. So really that's up to the city to set policy on success and whatnot of that. I can defer to Grace's team in terms of that type of recommendation. In terms of BC Assessment, our role is more just to provide information for the city to make that decision.
And as a cue, here's Grace. Hi, Grace.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your question. So I guess what BC Assessment can or cannot do in terms of, I think going to your point is splitting up the assessment value between development potential versus actual use or current use. That really depends on whether the province is really able to change the Assessment Act, and BC Assessment will just follow the Assessment Act and do accordingly. And on top of that, the 5-year limit is also set by the legislation is BC Assessment. So I think if there's any advocacy council wants to go back to the province, advocate for anything, it can come through a motion, or we can report back on what is the best way forward as part of our DPRP council back in March.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. And,
Thank you very much. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks. And to the presentation, I was curious, what's your sense of why there's so many more appeals of commercial properties versus residential? It seems like quite a gap there. I see 71 appeals for residential properties in 2024 versus 563 for non-residential.
Yeah, so you're referring to the second level of appeal, right? The Property Assessment Appeal Board. Historically, that's actually always been the case, where the second level of appeal historically has been, a lot of the, for example, commercial industrial properties. Again, I would not want to go too far as to venture why people decide to appeal their properties. Typically the case, though, is they are higher in value in terms of property value. And what would be is there is more of a economic incentive to appeal.
Among the non-residential properties?
Yes.
Okay. There's obviously, or correct me if I'm wrong, are there more residential properties versus non-residential in Vancouver?
Yes.
What does that look like?
I believe the stat was, so in terms of value, about 73% of the total value is residential properties. There is only approximately about 14 to 15,000 commercial and industrial properties.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And then my other question, I don't know if you can answer it, but I'll give it a try. I didn't see it in the report. The approximate percentage of commercial property appeals that are successful. Is that a number that you have?
We don't have specifically for for commercial. I'd have to come back and get that information for you. Yeah.
Okay. But takeaway is that commercial property assessments are appealed on a much higher basis than non-residential.
That's correct.
Than residential.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the slides that Jason spoke about was rollability. So, for example, the difference between completed to revise, and the difference in the assessment roll was, I believe it was a negative 0.4%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to clarify something for me, when we're looking at say land assembly that has been done of single-family homes, is that then classified as a commercial property, or is that still classified under residential? That new land assembly.
It depends. That's a very specific question, depending on the state and condition of the date. It could be considered, class 1 if the houses are still in place, being used. If they have transitioned to construction, then it would be a different classification.
Okay.
Potentially.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation and, coming to council every year. Thank you. Questions, very similar to Councilor Fry's questions. So, last 2 years, we passed few very important policy, land use policy, like the multiplex in late of 2023, and also the DOA transit-oriented area in the June last year. And, but I heard some complaint from the community that are saying, because of the policy, they should, uplift of their land value. But it actually happened. They saw a reduction of their value. So can you explain what's going there?
I can't really explain as to why market is reacting the way they are doing. I did to our residential team about this very point, and really the market isn't demonstrating a lift right now for an additional use. So if you have, for example, the typical single-family home, the potential to build, replace it with, up to 3 to 6 units, that has not been recognized in the market for whatever reason.
So could be the explanation you just gave to the Councilor Fry is because of gap. The market might take some time to react to the policy. Is that right?
There could be multiple reasons. Cost typically is a case, the appetite for that as well. I can say at this point right now is that there hasn't been any noticeable difference or uplift in a typical single-family home sale versus the ability to purchase it for that. Yeah.
Sorry, just want a little bit to the response as well. I think another thing to understand is that from a planning perspective, you may recall last time when the planning team actually came to council for all those additional density, it really depends on what those density are being planned for. If the additional density is purely for like rental only, or with the expectation of having 20% of the floor area below market rental, or just maybe some of them, the expectation is 20% social housing turnkey to the city, that brings down and adjusts the value from that perspective. So that also plays into the market expectation, what that piece of land should really be worth, depending on what the use that planning is intending for it to.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, well, I have you here. So another question to you, I think. So, so because of the appealing process, so if one property they appeal and the value has changed, how does that affect our property tax collection? Because the deadline is April 30th. But actually, we are making the tax in February.
Yeah, so for the City of Vancouver, we actually do our tax maybe a little bit differently from some other municipalities. For us, for the longest time, we have always provided some buffer in terms of contingency in our tax revenue, just included in part of the budget process. So we all anticipate a certain level of appeals that will come in, including some of those outstanding appeals from previous years. So if and when those appeals are higher or lower or just within our contingency, then the revenue coming in is not going to be impacted the budget at all because we build into contingency. And council actually, that is part of the budget that you approved.
Okay, and also the when we do the because we pay for the property tax, we can do the adjustment for the summer way.
Well, it depends on the appeal, but there will be adjustments coming forward. It doesn't have to be in the summer, even after the collection. If there needs to be adjustment, we can do it throughout the year through the supplementary role.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One more last question. So it's a very interesting article right after the BC assessment have published the value. So on the daily have seen the landmarks and the major properties in Vancouver. So it estimates Stanley Park has $3.6 billion compared to the QE Park with $455 million. Can you explain how do we value the land of a park? It's purely based on the land, the area of the land, or we consider historical significance of the land?
So we look at multiple factors when we're looking at parks in general, and I'll speak generally, just in terms of how we value parks. So it is a combination of how and how we look at parks. There are actually some park sales that we do look at, so that does happen from time to time, where we'll look at the value of a park on how it transacts in the marketplace. We'll also look at on the zoning, the surrounding zoning as well, to see the value of the surrounding zoning and how it relates to that park. So those really are the main ways to look at how to value that park.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clausen.
Thanks very much. At the risk of going slightly off topic, but we're in the realm here of property tax. I always like to ask the question, and it might not be your area, but the tax deferment that we often do. Just kind of curious, how many households currently, roughly, are in that are deferring taxes, and what the approximate amount that is for the city? Rather, I know that it's actually the province bills that supplement, but whenever we talk about property tax, it's always interesting to me to know how that program is going.
My apology, we don't have the number top of our head, but we're actually searching. This number will be reported to council annually in March, March or April-ish. Oh, no, actually, yeah, in exact number of households that are deferring. But if I remember correctly, over the last 5 to 8 years, it has been trending up. I think that probably is also the reason that people are just basically utilizing their home equity and when they to the, I would say, the senior age. And then particularly in the prior years, the interest being charged by the province on those outstanding ballots has been historically low. But we can report in terms of like this year and last year, how the lending has been.
Yeah, that would be good. I know that we've been preferably talking about seniors and housing and some of the cost burdens that some households are facing. And so that's an important topic to maybe revisit later on. I see now we've got some numbers here possibly.
Just looking in our report last year, we said that about 10,000 folios participated in the program in 2023. When we report back in March, we'll have them for 2020.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Klassen. Seeing no one else in the queue, no decision is required on this item, and the presentation was for information only. So thank you for coming on in, and thank you for all the work you're doing, and the presentation was incredibly informative, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving along. So now we're in the report section of the council meeting. So report number 1, local government by-election 2025. This was held by Councillor Kirby-Young. Now, before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to declare it. Does anyone have a conflict to disclose? And once again, I'm assuming the people in the queue are not here to declare a conflict. So if you have a conflict, please put up your hand. Seeing, great. This item does not have a team member presentation. So Councillor Kirby-Young, you held this item. You have 5 minutes to ask questions to team members. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks to staff for the report. I'm going to preface my question by saying that historically turnout in by-elections is low. And I know that timing is triggered by when resignations are received and the length of the period in terms of before an election can be held. Having said that, I'm noting that spring break in Vancouver is March 17th to 28th. And there's 2 dates here that fall within spring break. One as to when people can get their mail ballot packages on March 18th. And the second one is the first advance voting day on March 26th. And so I guess I'm wondering, were options considered? Was the impact of spring break considered? And were options considered? And are there any alternatives in the spirit of providing as many people as possible with the opportunity to vote?
Thank you for the question, Kalakwik City Clerk. We did consider alternate dates. We wanted to come to council with this report as soon as possible, and today was the earliest opportunity for that with the timing of the resignations. As you mentioned, typically by-elections are low turnout. The last one was 10.99%. And we were aware that there are some events taking place during spring break. There's also an advanced vote opportunity April 1st, which is not during spring break. And we're also in response to your question regarding vote by mail, we are pushing that as an option. We feel like there's ample time for folks to request vote by mail packages and submit them within the deadline, regardless of spring break timing.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? If there's ample time for people to get their mail ballot packages, but they're not, I'm just looking at page 3 of the report and it says mail ballot packages will March 18th. How would they get them if they're already away?
For those that are not in town, they are to them by courier
So we'd have,
at any address of the request.
and who has to pay for the couriers? The residents or the?
We only cover the Canada Post costs. If it's any other method, a different courier, they have to cover their own costs.
Okay. So the resident has to request a package and then for it because we're making it available during spring break. Okay. So I guess my other question then is 80 days triggers. Was there not an option for this to happen earlier and avoid spring break? I just want to be very clear about that.
We could do earlier. The only challenge is, of course, the planning of a by-election is a very short timeline already. We're already working under 80 days. We do have a lot of statutory requirements, deadlines, so condensing that I think would be quite a challenge for us.
But, is it possible? What would it look like? Like, what would conceivably an early election date look like, for the sake of argument or illustration?
Yeah, I think we're going to have some challenges if it were any earlier with getting the voting list. So right now, Elections BC is working on updating the voting list from the last provincial election. We've already requested it earlier than they were going to provide it to us. So they are working around our timeline for it, providing the voters list to us. And we're only, because of the condensed timeline with the by-election, we'll only be getting one extraction of the voters list, where we typically do 2 extractions. And
Okay, I see.
And we also need to secure the voting place with Parks Department, and that will
So the only
does take
other
some time. So
the only
it's
other-
a tight timeline.
So just jumping in for time, another option would be to go with a much later date, later in April. Okay, I see there's others on the queue, so I'm gonna come back on her. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Meisner?
Yes, Mayor. Just following up on one of Councillor Kirby-Young's question about the voters list. Is it true that people can still register at voting venue regardless of if they've received a thing in the mail?
Yes, you can vote. You can register by mail for the vote by mail process, or you can register at a voting location on advanced or general voting day.
Okay, thanks for confirming that. And then another question I had was, what is the ceremony like for taking the oath of office in a by-election?
Typically, for a by-election, it's during the council meeting. We would be consulting those that were elected, sort of as to what they would like to see at, but it's typically held during a council meeting. The last one was in 2017.
Okay, so no additional costs. Like, I know we had ours at the Orpheum for 2022 general election. This is not anything like that.
It's not our intention for this, no.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe?
Thanks, Mayor. So a couple of quick questions. So I realized at advanced voting, there's only one place, which is City Hall.
Correct.
It's quite different from the general election in 2022. Why is that?
One is just logistics, and I guess cost. Hiring voting day staff is expensive. And 2, we are promoting the vote by mail option, so that people vote any vote by mail at any time. We feel like just the one City Hall option is sufficient.
Do we expect a lot of people come to City Hall in advanced voting? And do we have enough parking for them because of the construction?
In terms of parking, we're working with engineering on curing parking spaces for the voting days, for those voting days.
And the construction on the side will not be ready before the election, right? Do we know that?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So I realized that we have 25 voting places. How many we have in the 2022 general election?
We had 82 in the last general election in 2022, and the last by-election we had 50.
50. So we are much less than the
Yes.
last by-election.
Yes.
Why is that?
We feel like we've located the voting places around, distributed them around the city. The voting location costs, so in terms of election workers, between the 2017 by-election had $545,000 on the election workers. In 2025, we're anticipating $150,000, so that's a 72% decrease. So it is a substantial cost. And in addition, that would also mean hiring. So in terms of election day workers, hiring in 2017 was 1,250, and in 2025, we're anticipating 250. So just in terms of the timeline we're working to and the budget we're working to, cost savings there.
Okay. So we only have half the voting places compared to the 2017 by-election.
Yeah, and I'd just like to note too that where most of the voting locations in 2022 general election were accessible, all our voting locations in 2025 will be accessible.
Okay. And do we expect to see an impact on the turnout rate in by-election because of the very limited voting places?
I don't know if that's going to be a factor. I think it's other factors in terms of who may be running for the election or other political factors potentially.
Okay, so my last question is about communication. So again, how do we reach out to the community who typically do not speak English.
Mhm.
I think with this communication plan to reach out those
Right.
cultural community.
We will be partnering with community groups to, such as neighborhood houses, libraries, community centers, to distribute posters and pamphlets, multiple languages. We will have Carnegie Community Center will serve as a voting location to support our downtown east side residents to cast their ballots. We'll be having information posters on different locations, and we'll be on voting day, we use language line. We'll have on-demand language support for in over 180 languages, and we'll have staff will be providing election information in plain language, online, and print in multiple languages.
So other than the voting days, so how do we encourage them to vote before the voting day? Like specifically, I'm talking about probably South Asia and Chinese community, which is about 50% of our population. We encourage them to vote. Yeah.
Hi there, Natty Schmid, Manager of Communications for the elections. We're going to be lots of paid and organic social media campaigns in multiple languages to meet different target audiences. We're also going to do paid advertising in multilingual outlets as well.
Okay, so we'll be in the platform in the cultural community as well.
Correct, yes.
Okay, good. Thanks. That's all my question. Thanks, Mayor.
Mayor, just one follow-up point on Councillor Joe's question around the construction on the parking deck at City Hall. We do expect that deck will be available.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dominato.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the update and report. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. One relates to the 2017 municipal by-election review that was provided. It was asked and requested at the previous council, and then delivered to the council. Are we reviewing the outcomes and findings of that to inform the by-election? Have we? And I can maybe hone in on a specific question I have. Lined in that report was that at the time, previously general elections had a voter information package, and while there's not a regulatory need to actually provide postcards or anything with respect to voting, the decision was made not to have direct addressed mail to voters because of the cost. And I don't know, I'm not clear if I see that. I don't see that in the list of budget items for the election office. So I was looking to get some clarity as, are we including that or not? And did we consider that? Because there is a gap in people's awareness of these by-elections. The last turnout is 10%. So could you just comment on what our thing is around the direct mail?
This when we plan to do unaddressed mail, so postcards to every unit. We did have challenges with those in apartment structures where their addressed mail was found in recycling bins, and that thing, it wasn't actually making its way to the residents. So we feel like this approach will hopefully reach more people. And you won't need ID to vote if you are registered. So you don't need a card or anything like that. You just show up and you provide your name and you sign on the forms. So we don't feel like there would, in terms of the cost, it's quite substantial. We don't feel like it would have additional benefits.
Okay, so there will be unaddressed mail notification to all households with an address in the city of Vancouver in advance. And I think Councillor Kirby-Young raised a good point about spring break. Do we anticipate those being out and delivered Canada Post in advance of spring break? Starting just because people often plan vacations around that time.
Right.
We would plan that with Canada Post?
To get them out?
Yeah, and delivered to households before the 18th? Or I guess
The first
14th. Back to calendar, but...
Postcards will be going out a week of March 10th.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's all for the questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks. Just had a couple of follow-ups. Just following up on Councillor Dominato's questions around the mail-out. Just to clarify, is that in multiple languages or is that just in English?
Hi there. It will be in one language in English, but we'll have a QR code linking to the website with translated materials.
Okay.
And there'll be translated language on the postcard. in all 11 languages outlined in the language access policy, indicating to go to the website for the fulsome translation.
Do we have any concerns about elderly people, my parents, like they don't know how to use QR codes, so they're not going to go to a website? Is there any possibility of including, say, English and other widely spoken languages in Vancouver on that postcard? Is it designed already?
It's not already designed, and we are sending off fulsome materials for translation, so it's definitely something we can explore in terms of like which snippets to include on the postcard.
Okay. Okay. And would that require council direction or?
No.
Okay, you'll take that feedback back?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was around, it seems like we're cutting the costs on the number of election workers and also the by-election locations. Trina, you mentioned 50 locations in 2017, is that correct? And now 25?
Mhm.
And then how many workers in 2017 versus what we're proposing for this year?
Was 1,250 in 2017 and now 250.
So given that by-election turnouts are really, really low, why are we doing this? It seems like we're making it more difficult.
I think in 2017, we had the vote by mail was only available for certain groups. I forget exactly which. Okay, sorry. That in 2017, it was only available vote by mail to persons with disabilities and those folks that were out of town. It's now available to everybody, so we feel like that's one way where people may take advantage of that. We are planning for hopefully a larger number of users taking up on vote by mail.
Okay, and just remind me, in 2022, did we have vote by mail?
Yes.
Was that available to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah. Do we know what percentage of people voted by mail in 2022, roughly?
About 10,500 packages were mailed out.
Okay. And we would expect that most of those would have been returned.
10,200 were returned.
1,000.
10,000.
10,200. What is that in percentage of voters? I'm just trying to do mental math. I'm just trying to figure out what we're basing our assumptions for this year on the vote by mail returns versus 2020.
During that election, it was around 2%. Again, that was the first time where we kind of promoted it. We're going to actively try and promote that again this time with our communications to the public.
Okay, but just to clarify, they have to request the package, correct? They don't just automatically, not everybody gets a package.
Yes, you need to request.
Request it.
Yeah.
Okay. Through that QR code.
Through our website, or you can phone to 311 or come in person to our office.
Okay, thanks for answering those questions. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Hi, can I ask for a second round, Mayor? I have 2 more questions.
Sure. Second, Councillor Joe, all in favor say aye. Great.
Thank you. Okay, the first one is a simple one. Just looking at the proposed date of the election on April 5th, and then it says that the new councillors would be sworn in late April, early May. Do we envision that those councillors would be participating, just looking at the council schedule here, in the last council cycle meetings at the end of April, April 29th and 30th?
It just depends on when they would be sworn in. So yeah, if they were sworn in that last cycle in April, they could participate in those meetings.
Okay, that would be great. And then my other question is on just looking at page 4 and the budget breakdown. Can you just provide us with a bit of perspective? I'm just following up on Councillor Meisner's question around the election workers allocation is only 150, but the election office allocation is 740,000. And what does that comprise of? What type of expenses sit under the office cost for 740,000?
Sure. So the election office expenses are staffing of the election office. So we have had some increases there where we're doing some succession planning. There was, of course, inflation, and we created some new positions based on expanding some services such as vote by mail. We're also planning forward for 2026. So a lot of it's around succession planning. It also includes the rental of vehicles for voting days, printing, supplies, like office expenses.
So just to sort of reflect back, clarify then, are both of those line items predominantly staffing, and is that staff directed specifically to working on the election? Is it more kind of the front line, getting people the information, helping them vote?
It would be, the election office would include sort of more the regular staff team, so the ones working in the election office, everything from processing nomination papers to the vote by mail to communications. And then the election workers are the actual day of advanced voting. That includes their training and then the payment they receive for working on advanced voting days and/or the general voting day.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much. Seeing no one else in the queue, would someone like to move a motion? Great, Councillor Claassen, seconded by Councillor Bly. Council members, is there any discussion? Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks to staff for preparing the report. This is my second term on council, and I haven't been through a by-election, so I think it's good for helpful for everybody to understand the process. I will be clear that I have concerns around. I think we always want to be striving to maximize voter turnout. It's difficult at the civic level always. It's harder even during a by-election scenario. I am concerned around the spring break overlap, not just with the one advanced voting date, but the fact that we have two impacts, and including getting the mail-in ballot packages when a lot of people that are going away will have already gone and left for their family vacations. So I'm pleased to see the work that's going into the preparation for the report, but I have some concerns with the timing and how it's laid out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks. I also just want to echo some of Councillor Kirby-Young's concerns regarding maximizing voter turnout. I understand we are relying on more mail-in ballots, hoping for more mail-in participation this year, but 2% in 2022 is not a high number to me. So I'm hopeful that our campaign efforts will increase that total, but I wouldn't say we have a long history in allowing people to vote that way with a 2% turnout. So I do have some concern around that. But I think most importantly, the mail out that we send, the physical hard copy mail out that people will be receiving in their mailboxes to inform them of the by-election, I think that's a really critical piece. And as I mentioned, I really would like to see not just English on that mail out, I'd like to see the other two most spoken languages in Vancouver. And on the QR code, I know not to sound like people maybe necessarily don't understand technology, but I can just speak from experience that a lot of elderly people that I know in my life don't have cell phones, or they don't know how to scan a QR code, for example. So I just would really caution that if we are expecting people to use a QR code to find out more information about how to get a mail-in ballot, for example. For some of the people in our community, also with accessibility issues, or that are just elderly or don't have a cell phone with a camera, that's going to be a problem. So that's why I'd really like to see those widely spoken languages on the card, and not having people have to scan a QR code to see the information in their language. So, but with all that said, thanks for all of your efforts. I know this timeline is tight and it's 2 seats, not just one. So I do appreciate staff's efforts in getting ready on a really short, tight timeline. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Claassen.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks to my colleagues for their questions and good discussion here today. But really, thanks to staff, who it is truly complicated. We have a very diverse population here in the city of Vancouver. By-elections have been traditionally challenging to get higher turnout, but I appreciate the efforts and the plan that has been put forward here. I think certainly the communication piece is going to be really key, and I think we'll be watching all of that, of course, as we watch the election period unfold. I think that the spring break may be an opportunity. It's very expensive to go away these days right now, so kind of wondering if some families might be sticking more close to home this year especially. But thanks very much for all the work you're putting into this, and I look forward to seeing the great results come April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Seeing no one else in the queue, I'm now going to call a vote. Can we please go to the voting screen? Great. And that passes with Councillor Kirby-Young abstaining. Sorry, and there's just something going on the screen here. Vacant 1 and vacant 2. One says ineligible and one says not voted, but doesn't matter. All right. Just making sure it's correct. And by the way, yes, thank you for all the hard work that you put into this. It's a pretty heavy lift and a short timeline, so thank you. Okay. Next on the docket is number 3, federal funding for Canby Street Bridge seismic upgrade project. Now, before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes that they have a conflict of interest, can they please put up their hand? Great. Okay, this item does not have a team member presentation. Councillor Kirby Young, you held this item. You have up to 5 minutes to ask questions to our team members.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have a few clarifying questions. The first one is just around looking for affirmation clarity on the overall project budget. I know there's some language in this report around 40% of eligible costs to the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund. And then it shows future approval for the city of needing a future almost $63 million. We're showing a total project here on the last page of the report of 217.5. I'm just looking for clarity if that is the total bridge rehabilitation seismic upgrading costs, or if we're expecting any further costs in addition to that.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Lon Leclerc, General Manager of Engineering Services. Yeah, that is the total cost.
Okay. On that note, then, because there's presumably sort of a matching component, and we're getting the DMAF funding, so we're approving this on an assumption that will it be the 2026 capital plan? I know there's reference to multi-year budget that the additional 63 million we'll have to put that stake in the ground, and that will have to come from.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so we have to kind of view this decision with that's going to be baked into our next capital plan.
That's correct.
Okay. My next question is around, there's a note in the report, transportation improvements on the bridge, such as widening and active transportation lanes are not included above. And also a reference to maybe contracting efficiencies. Obviously, there usually is in a day of very high construction and escalating costs. So what do we potentially have planned for improving active transportation on the bridge? What would that look like? What would that cost? And can that be coordinated with this work for financial efficiency?
Yeah, so first of all, we are hoping to coordinate that work with this because it does make the total project more efficient. The key components that we're looking at is, if you're familiar with the southbound bike lane, of course, it's not in place right now because of the work that's underway. It squeezes down into a very small section as you're directed off the off-ramp. And in the transportation objectives, we'd like to widen that so that it's a full width walking and cycling space. So that would be done as part of this. In addition to that, we are looking to replace the staircase at the south side and the switchback ramp on the north side. There are opportunities to do a better job of those facilities. And so again, anything that would be related to a transportation improvement, which would improve the walking and cycling condition, would be something that we would fund out of something like transportation DCLs.
Okay, and when might council get sort of a information back or a request for funding for those additional components? Any sense?
I mean, at this point, those would all come in the next capital plan. We have a number of components that have been completed and are underway right now. So those, at this stage, there would be no decision for council on those components. We would create a budget that would fit in for kind of the council approval for a scope piece for the next capital plan as part of the capital planning budget for the next capital plan. But in this capital plan, there would, other than setting a budget parameter, we wouldn't have anything for council.
Just keeping going for time then, the additional improvements you mentioned on the southbound lane or widening those for cycling, et cetera, walking. So would that give us additional capacity for micromobility too, looking at as we're having additional demand coming into the city?
That's correct. I mean, that's for the portion that is of the kind of adequate width, it allows for passing, for example, and with electric and non-electric wheeled users, there can be a speed differential. And so in the full width, it would allow for capacity increases and different types to kind of share the facility more
And
easily.
different types. Okay, that's great because we are hearing more about the need for accommodating micro-mobility users. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you Thank you very much, Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Lon. Your responses did raise a couple questions for me. When you talk about widening the bike lane on the south off-ramp, would there still be enough room for a traffic lane on that south off-ramp as well, down to West 2nd?
Yeah, right now, we're really pushing the limits with the facility that we have in place right now. As you know, we have flexible bollards that are there. Those are designed to be hit by a vehicle and not cause damage to the vehicle. And so it's a little bit tighter than we want. For the full design, we would put the full width for the vehicle. It's important truck connection. We see lots of concrete trucks making their way to Granville Island. So yes, for the vehicle lane, we'd get it to the desirable width, the bike lane to the desirable width, and same for the walking lane.
Okay, that's great to hear. There's room for all of that. Any thought to the north side? I know that as someone who does take Moby here occasionally and back home downtown, that division between pedestrians and cyclists on the north side is pretty tenuous at times. Is there any thoughts around improvements to divide those two user groups?
Yeah, so included in this this project, the switchback ramp that you experience at the north side to go under the off-ramp, that does require replacement. And that's right now probably where we see the most conflict and awkwardness, just because those really hairpin turns are hard to navigate, on wheels. And of course, as you mentioned, walking and cycling isn't clearly delineated in some of those sections.
Okay, but on the actual bridge on the north side, on the sidewalk, I guess that is also for cyclists, are we anticipating or planning to have more clear division? Sometimes you see cyclists in the pedestrian side and vice versa. I've seen a few close calls.
For the majority of the northbound direction, we don't actually have the width to put anything physical there.
Okay.
So the division is really just by a painted line.
Mm-hmm.
And so really doing that more clearly in the sections where there's mixing and say, for example, at the north end where the ramp goes off, people are walking straight, but cyclists have to cross them. We don't really have the space to delineate how that should be sorted, and so it sort of happens in an informal way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. And then just on the broader project that's underway right now, this new funding, is that going to, I wasn't clear on the answers to Councillor Kirby-Young's question. Does that expand the project that's happening now and also the timeline, or are we still anticipating a spring 2025 wrap up?
No, for this funding is really specifically about seismic upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And so the components that are not eligible, the ineligible components, have to be funded through other means, such as a transportation project like that. So what this does is it changes the seismic performance of this bridge to being one of the most vulnerable to actually one of the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we feel the application is going to be successful, is because it's such a dramatic difference in its seismic performance in a seismic event. Yeah.
Well, that's great news. So, but just so I'm clear, like the work that's happening there now will end this spring.
Oh yeah, sorry. The work that's happening right now is expansion joint replacement. That's due to leaking that's occurring right now into those joints and actually making the bridge susceptible to corrosion in areas that have us very concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So that's work that's underway right now. That will be wrapping up this spring.
Okay.
So that's different. And in terms of the seismic work, I mean, ultimately we were planning on doing seismic approval, but we were expecting that we would be doing that over a period of 25 years.
Okay.
Because again, the amount of money that we have available through our capital plans would necessitate that very, very long timeline.
Yeah.
With this money, it allows us to do it within the next 10 years.
Okay, but would we be looking at more lane closures? I guess that's my question. I know right now it's challenging.
Oh,
to get
yeah,
across.
no, in terms, again, with most of the seismic work, most of the seismic work is below. So it's not affecting the traffic deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for those answers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Long, for the answers. A few of my question has been answered. So my other question about this federal funding. So why we didn't apply this funding earlier, secure the funding, secure the money, and before doing the construction? Why we wait until now?
Thank you for the question. I'm Liz Jones, Senior Manager of Government Partnerships and Funding Strategy. We haven't started the seismic upgrade yet, so we applied for the funding. You can't start the construction until you've signed a funding agreement. And so this program opened and we applied in July of 2023.
Okay, so we are actually not starting the seismic upgrade until we receive this funding.
That's correct. The funding has to be secured and an agreement has to be signed before we can even sign any contracts related to the work.
I see. Okay, so then my other question is how confident we are for this application to get approved by the federal government? I know it's difficult.
Yes.
Also probably, yeah.
That's a difficult question to answer because of the confidentiality. But getting this council resolution is another step that moves us closer to having the funding awarded.
Okay, so what happens if it is rejected? Where this money is coming from? Are we still gonna?
Oh, then I think that this would only happen in this manner if the funding is secured.
Okay.
If the funding is not secured, then I think we'd probably go back to the original schedule of doing it over multiple capital plans.
Oh, I see. Okay, so when could we know the results of this approval or not?
Hopefully within the next, by the end of February.
Okay. And if it is not approved, which means the seismic upgrade will be suspended?
Well, it will go back, I think, to the original schedule. I think this work was planned and it was going to be done over multiple capital plans. We've moved it forward to take advantage of this opportunity to get the senior government funding.
So it will affect the future capital plans cycle?
Yes.
Okay. All right, finger crossed. Hopefully it'll be approved. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just a couple of clarifying questions. Beyond the endorsement for a funding application to the feds, the city's contribution overall, is it coming from property taxes or what other sources of revenue is it coming from?
Thanks, Colin Knight, General Manager of Finance and Supply Chain. So the funding sources, it's in the report, in the table, but it's like primarily debenture, like city debt, and there is also a TransLink funding program that's noted as a funding source that we'd be seeking to complete the full project budget.
Okay, that's helpful. I just want to circle back just to make sure I understood correctly. Lon, when you talked about the timeline and taking advantage of this grant program, it was that in order to undertake the seismic overhaul, remediation of Kembe Bridge, it would have taken us upwards of 25 years over multiple capital plans. In the hopes that we get this funding from the federal government, that reduces that timeline from 25 years to 10 years, potentially, to do all of the seismic upgrades to the bridge. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I understood that roughly.
Yeah. I mean, I could ask Director of Streets to elaborate if you'd like a little bit more on that.
Sure. I just have sure. If you can because I have a few more questions I want to get to.
Mittal, Director of Streets.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very hard for us to prioritize funding for seismic because our rehab needs on all of the structures are so great. And so if we aren't successful with this application, then it's at least 25 years and probably longer before we would get to realize the benefits of any kind of seismic upgrade. And if we are successful, we're looking at an 8-year program.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful. I just wanted to clarify in the, 2 more questions. In the end of the report under talking about the federal program, under financial implications, it says to meet the DMAF deadline of December 31st, 2032. Is that a timeline that we have to have the work completed?
Yes, that's a requirement of the funding, is that completed, or they use the term substantially completed, but basically completed.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think my last question was largely addressed, which was around just the federal landscape. So if you know, we're going into likely a federal election this spring, if we don't get the grant funding for whatever reason, then we would just have to revert back to city funding it, some funding coming from TransLink, and it would be over a longer period of time.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That's all my questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much. Again, many of my questions were answered. I just had a quick question related to the access from the seawall. So on the southeast side of the Cambie Street Bridge, the access from the seawall, the stairs that, is there any changes to that access point to the bridge? And if I missed that, I apologize. I just wanted to make sure I got that.
Yes, as part of this work, we would be looking to replace that staircase that exists there. So that would be a full replacement. And again, what that looks like at this point, we haven't really determined that. So that's something that ultimately, council might have an interest in kind of directing us on.
Okay, replacement can mean many things. What would be some of those goals we would be looking to achieve, recognizing accessibility? I guess what I'm asking is, it's an excellent access point for folks using the seawall, and recognizing that it's obviously very limited in terms of accessibility. So by replacement, what do we mean? It
could be another staircase. It could be a staircase ramp combo. It could be wide. It could take up lots of space. It could be incorporated with, future development that we plan to do on the east side of the bridge. At this point, it's hard to, there's a lot of options. Certainly what was built there right now was kind of a minimal staircase. It's kind of a minimized footprint, and the kind of circle all the way as you go down.
Okay, and just approximate timeline for that planning and design, and noting that you've indicated council direction may be required, so I can take this offline with you, but I'm just wondering what that timeline looks like.
Yeah, we could, what would be better is we get back to you with that on the timeline, but ultimately it's going to take a lot longer to get to the point of where we're kind of designing that piece and getting ready to construction. So it might be the next council term.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Those are my questions, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, well, thank you for the clarification around the what happens if we don't get that support from the federal government. I think that was one of my main questions. What is this going to look like for traffic impacts and duration? And how are we going to? I understand that a lot of this will be under the bridge, but I'm also looking forward to. Apparently, we have some big soccer games that are coming here soon, and I'm just curious how this will work around FIFA.
Again, for the work that we're doing in the next couple of years, it's pretty minor. We'll be finishing up the expansion joints that you see that work underway right now. So that would be pretty much it from now until FIFA. We have some below grade work. Do you want to speak to that, Eric?
Yeah, as Lon was mentioning, we have work that will start under the bridge before FIFA, and we're working closely with our internal FIFA groups, and our intention is to just pause that work for the duration of FIFA and then to restart it once we're done.
Okay, so this
minimal traffic impacts on the bridge and on the deck, and virtually no impact during FIFA.
Okay.
And if I could just elaborate, the way that the seismic work looks, a lot of it is related to the foundations. So it's really at the base of the bridge. And then there is freezing of some of those expansion joints on the surface. So that's kind of the stuff that you would see at the surface. And that would be quite some time from now in the next capital plan.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else in the queue. Thank you, Councillor Bly, seconded by Councillor Young. Council, is there any discussion? Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much. I'll keep it brief. I know we're just sort of powering through this morning. I just wanted to recognize the sort of thoughtfulness and forward thinking of staff to really bring this forward. The DMAF funding is an incredible opportunity for us to fund a significant project within our city in an accelerated timeline, and I think that's excellent. So I'm very, very happy to support the decision before us today. I think it's important that folks know the initial iteration of this fund was a disaster adaptation fund that the Government of Canada brought to be in 2018, and then over time recognized that it was actually adaptation that was really a challenge for municipalities to be funding those projects, both in climate change impacts, but also natural disasters. So, a bit of a shout out, a shameless plug maybe as president of FCM, that the work that FCM has done to boost this program and recognize the value of federal programming where municipalities can apply directly for federal funding of this significant amount is really unprecedented. And again, came in 2018 and has been recapitalized twice actually to the tune of $3.8 billion both in 2021 and 2022. So these are not insignificant numbers, and it's not the decision necessarily of the government today. It already is a funding envelope that exists within this program. So regardless of what's happening in Ottawa, we know that funding is there through till 2032. So it's both an amazing opportunity for us, of course, as a big city in our country, but also smaller communities as well that are able to access these funds. There is a deficit, we understand, when it comes to climate-related infrastructure renewal, as well as preparing for natural disasters of $5.3 billion annually to adapt local infrastructure. So there is a current call to increase this fund. We'll see where that goes, given everything that is happening in Ottawa, but we continue to press on. We know that for every $1 invested in adaptation measures today, $13 to $15 will be returned in direct and indirect savings and benefits. And having just passed a budget, but also wrestling with a major deficit in our capital budget. Spending this money now in this very impactful way is the way to build a city for the future. And so I just want to commend staff again for giving us the opportunity to really better understand how we make these decisions and how it impacts future generations. And just kudos to staff for pushing this through. So let's hope it's successful, and I look forward to that update when it comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. Yeah, $217 million is a lot of money, and I think it's really important that Council asks questions about how that's spent. I will note in this report, it's pretty starkly points out that over the 3 bridges over Falls Creek, Canby Bridge really is the only one that can be seismically upgraded to levels that are not achievable with Granville and Burrard. And when you think about the population concentration in the downtown core and people being able to get in and out, that's a pretty sobering comment, but encouraging that this would provide for resiliency in the event, hopefully not, of a major event or disaster like that the bridge would be able to be pressed into service, and that would enable sort of a response in that situation. So I think that's important and noteworthy. I'm also happy to hear that staff are looking at the active transportation option considerations in conjunction with this. I get a lot of emails lately around the need to make more space for micromobility in other forms, so not just increasing population, but the differences in how people are choosing to get around, which inevitably starts to shift as new technologies are available and as our city gets busier, and it therefore takes longer to get places, and people look at creative ways to do that. So I'm excited to hear and learn more about that work to sort of build out that capacity, if you will. But thank you, appreciate the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Seeing no one else in the queue, I'm now going to call a vote. Can we please go to the voting panel? Great, and the motion passes unanimously, so that's awesome. And thank you for all your hard work. Okay, next item on the docket is number 4, report number 4, I should say, the 2025 Cultural Grants Projects Advanced Multi-Year Cultural Spaces. Now, before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes that they have a conflict, if they can put up their hands. Seeing none, this item does not have a team member presentation. Now, council has 5 minutes to ask questions to team members, and seeing no one else in the queue, we're going to go directly to registered speakers for this report. Public speakers will have 3 minutes to speak, should state whether they are in support or opposition of the recommendations, and may only speak once. I will also ask speakers if they're residents of Vancouver, if it's not noted on the speakers list. Now, the first speaker we have is Yassine Kiraga Masago. Is Yassine here? Nope. Okay. Well, that is the end of our speakers list. Okay, Councillor Blythe, thank you. Councillor Joe, thank you very much. Council members, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we're going to bring this one to a vote. So if we can please go to the voting panel. And that passes unanimously. So thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to go to CD-1 rezoning. Whoops, advance to the next item. What's going on here? Okay, thanks for coming in, everyone. CD-1 rezoning 4545 through 4575 West 10th Avenue. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes that they have a conflict of interest, can they please put up their hand and declare it? All right, seeing none. This item does not have a team member presentation. Councillor Dominato, I believe you held this item and you have 5 minutes to ask questions of team members.
Thanks. Just a couple of procedural questions. There's obviously been a lot of public interest in this particular rezoning. Could staff just clarify for public record that council's ability to add conditions or give direction at the time of public hearing? There has been, I think, a lot of public interest, residents sending correspondence to council in advance of this even being referred. And so just in the interest of trying to address their questions, can you just clarify again the rules and around that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Casey Peters, Assistant Director of the Rezoning Center. There is opportunity during the public hearing for council to direct staff to add new conditions. We sometimes need time to craft what those are worded as. So if there is an opportunity to work with you in advance, that's always helpful for us.
Okay, thank you. And then just a second question, because I believe members of the public have submitted input to council, but also to staff over the many, many months leading up to referral at this time. At this time, the planning department deems that that everything is in alignment and compliance to have this referred to public hearing at this time, that everything is met, that the conditions that are necessary for it to come to a public hearing.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Scott Erdman, Rezoning Planner. I can confirm that yes, staff feel that the process has been taken care of according to our policies, and that the proposal through the referral report is ready to be considered by council at public hearing.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll leave it there so we don't get into the content of the report itself. And I'm happy at this time, Mayor, to move referral to public hearing. Unless there's other questions. Sorry, I didn't look.
We do have
sorry,
Meisner in the queue.
Sorry, I'll wait.
Okay?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick question. Similar to Councillor Dominato, we've been in receipt of the community's desires for the proposal. Those conditions, you clarified and confirmed that it would be appropriate during the public hearing if we were wishing to add conditions. Just to confirm, if they were conditions around streetscape improvements, for example, would that be appropriate at that time as well?
Certainly, we would have staff available to help work with you on those conditions. We anticipate that we will have folks from our engineering transportation team as well as development planning. So depending on the nature of what the condition was, we would have the appropriate staff available to work with you to craft the condition.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for confirming that. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Dominato, seconded by, I think, Councillor Meisner. Was that you? I was looking down. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion, Council? Seeing no one in the queue, I'm now going to call a vote. If we can please go to the voting panel, and if you can register your vote. And that passes unanimously as well. Thank you very much. Okay, moving along, let's go to bylaws. We have 11 bylaws on the agenda for an enactment. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes that they have a conflict, if they can please put up their hand and disclose it. Seeing no one there. Bylaw number 1 was from the public hearing on January the 23rd and 30th, 2020. Councillors absent for this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Bly, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment? Great. Councillor Klassen? Councillor Meisner? Great. Councillor Montague? Great, thank you. And Councillor Joe? Great, and I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 2 was from the public hearing on May the 30th, 2024. Councillors absent for this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Dominato, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment? Great, and I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 3 was from the public hearing on February the 29th, 2024. Councillors absent for this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Klassen, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment?
Yes, I have and I will.
Thank you. Councillor Meisner?
I have and I will.
Great, thank you. And I have not, and I will not. Bylaws 4 and 5 were from the public hearing on July the 12th, 2024. Councillors absent from this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Klassen, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment?
I have and I will.
Great, thank you. Councillor Meisner?
I have and I will.
Councillor Montague? Great. Councillor Joe? Great, and I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 6 was from the public hearing on April the 9th, 2024. Councillors absent for this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Kirby-Young, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment? Great, thank you. And I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 7 was from the public hearing on December the 10th, 2024. Councillors absent for this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Bly, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment? Thank you. Councillor Dominato? Thanks. And Councillor Kirby-Young? Thank you. And I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 9 was from the public hearing on April the 14th, 19th, and 21st, 2022. Councillors absent for this item at the public hearing needed to review the proceedings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Councillor Bly, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment? Thank you. And I have not, and I will not. Would someone like to move a motion to adopt bylaws 1 through 11? Councillor Klassen, seconded by Councillor Dominato. Thank you. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. The list of approved bylaws can be found on the city's website. Okay, notice of council member motions. Are there notices of council member motions for the upcoming standing committee meetings? A reminder to please state the title of the motion and the date of the standing committee meeting on which you intend to move the motion, and be sure to send the title and date to the standing committee, of the standing committee meeting by email to the city clerk. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is notice of motion for February 5th, 2025, bringing back the block party supporting Davie Village and Vancouver Pride celebrations.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Oh, right. Yeah, that did feel a little different. You need, yeah. Yeah, we don't need to second a notice. Yeah. We're adding more red tape along the way. Going a little too fast here. Okay, on that note, thank you very much, Councillor Meisner. Councillor Klassen.
Mayor, just making sure that we're on to inquiries and other matters.
No, we're on motions, notice of motions.
Okay, it does say on the X panel, it does say new business and inquiries in addition to member motions. So I just wanted to make sure it looked like.
That will be next.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
then I am.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump here one sec. Councillor Blythe, do you have a notice of motion or is this for the next one? Okay. Awesome. Okay, so I just want to make sure no one else has any other notice of motions that they want to submit. Great. Thank you very much. We are going to move on to new business. We have one item of new business on the agenda today, and it's requests for leaves of absence. Now, this motion has been circulated to council at the beginning of the meeting and is available on the screen. We'll just pull that up there. If everyone can please review it to make sure it fully captures anything that you may want to put on there. Does anybody need additional time or are we all good? Okay. So on that, would someone like to move the motion? Great. Councillor Dominato, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Meisner. Council, is there any discussion? If you can please put up your hand because there's a whole bunch of people in the queue, but I'm assuming it's for something else. So, all right, no discussion. All those in favor say yay. Great. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. So council, are there any other items of new business? And I see a bunch of you in the queue. So I'm going to go with Councillor Klassen to start. And can we please reset?
Can I just ask the clerk to remove? I don't have new business. I have an inquiry. But I can't turn this off.
Okay, so I'm just going to advance you off.
Please, thank you.
And then we're on new business right now. Inquiries will be right after. So Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I have one new item, a new business item, and it's been emailed into the clerks. It's regarding a business license hearing where I will be sitting as chair and have been asked by the clerks to move this motion that Councillor Zhou replace former Councillor Carr as an alternate member at the business license hearing meeting to be held on Tuesday, January 28th, 2025.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Klassen. Is there any discussion, council? Okay, so we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. Just moving together two LOAs for myself. The first one for personal business for the Council Reserve, scheduled Wednesday, January 29th, 3 to 10 p.m. And the second LOA for civic business for the Council Reserve, scheduled Thursday, February 20th, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Great. Seconded by Councillor Kirby-Young. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say, can't talk. All those opposed say no way. Jose? No? All right. That one passes too. Councillor Meisner.
Yes, okay. It's a new business license hearing. I did email this into the clerks, but essentially it is Councillor Dominato and I replacing each other at business license hearings. So that Councillor Meisner replaced Councillor Dominato as panel member at the business license hearing meeting to be held on Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. And further, that Councillor Dominato replaced myself, Councillor Meisner, as a panel member at the business license hearing meeting to be held on Wednesday, January 9th, 2025.
Can we please get a seconder? Councillor Dominato. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. Great. The motion passes. Okay. Seeing no one else in the queue, now we're going to go to inquiries and other matters. And I believe Councillor Klassen, you are up.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge some work that happened behind the scenes over the past many weeks. with regard to the FIFA practice space that is now, as of last night's news announcement, will be moved to UBC. I know that these were very important and perhaps at times delicate negotiations taken upon by our city staff. But I think it reflects really where a lot of us were feeling that the community who around Memorial South Park felt very strongly that this is a disruption to their access to the park that they were not willing to accept. We certainly heard them, and they did come to the chamber at one time, and we did meet with some of them, some of the people from the community. But I guess I would like to thank city staff, UBC, and as well Vancouver Whitecaps for working with us and creating that space available and creating a real win-win for, I think, for both the community and as well the city, because I know we are all extraordinarily excited about FIFA World Cup coming in next year, and I think this will just be great. And I know that the work is ongoing and beginning at the Killarney Park, my old stomping grounds, and I'm watching that starting to take shape, and I'm very excited about that. Well, and I'm sure the community are going to be excited to see some of that activity around the World Cup practice field starting to happen within the city of South Vancouver as well. So, just an acknowledgement for all of the people who came together and did that work, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Claassen. Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I just wanted to flag and sort of raise as a point of inquiry for follow-up the related closures of businesses surrounding the Dunsmuir House demolition over the weekend, and recognizing that there was extensive discussion here at Council before we broke for the holidays related to this specific demolition. But what was interesting, and not to sort of question staff's process, I think they've done a very good job at navigating an incredibly difficult situation. Just the impacts on the surrounding community, and particularly the small business community that were forced to close 3 days over the weekend. When you're selling, takeout meals and things like that, 3 days of closure is not insignificant. The cost related to having to pay staff and not being open, as well as sort of the unexpected nature, let's say, of those closures meant significant inconvenience and cost borne by local small businesses that are wrestling with, hundreds of dollars, not multiples of thousands of dollars to sort of cover their bottom line when we talk about day-to-day costs and challenges associated with running a small business. So it wasn't discussed in that meeting, and I wish it had been, because I think it's significant, and I think it needs to be tabled as a concern related to any future discussions with this particular building owner in terms of the costs that have been and the impacts of their neglect on the surrounding local small businesses in that area. I know that there have been concerns about the state of this building, day to day on the streets from these local businesses over the years. And so to have them be directly impacted, I think was incredibly disappointing. Again, I can't say enough, there were no options for staff. Out of the safety of the surrounding area, streets had to close and businesses had to close. But I do think it needs to be quantified and recognized as a loss that nobody's responsible for except the small business owners. And I would like the building owner in future discussions to know what that number is, and to know that in any future development of the site, these are the businesses that they want to be working with. And so the connection back to the community in that sense is incredibly important. So I guess my inquiry is really just to ask the city manager, who I know is aware of the situation, to continue on those conversations to ensure that any loops are closed with those small businesses, and that we're aspiring to have the best possible process in terms of notifying businesses of impacts to their ability to conduct their businesses on a day-to-day level as a result of situations like this that are granted unprecedented, but an opportunity all the same to support our local small business sector.
So Mayor, just to acknowledge Councilor Blythe's points, thank you for that. So yes, we will pursue that matter further and we'll update council.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other inquiries or other matters? Seeing no one in the queue, may we have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Montague, I think seconded by Councillor Bly. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, this meeting is adjourned.